Transformers is a toy brand. The purpose behind this ridiculously developed and expansive universe about a galactic civil war between the noble Autobots and evil Decepticons is ultimately to sell toys. The original American cartoon, simply titled The Transformers, which ran from 1984 to 1987, is essentially a 4-season long advertisement for toys that transform from cars, trucks, planes, and just about everything else into giant robots. It's okay, Cosmo. We still love you, buddy. You're just special. Kids would see their favourite bots on their television screens and then go steal their mum's credit card to go and buy a G1 wheelie so they could create their own Transformers adventures. Yeah, I would be mad even if they bought this with their own money. Of course, the brilliance behind advertising toys with a television show is that it elevates these carcasses of moving molded plastic into actual characters with personality and presence in the minds of kids. They look at this Jeep and see Hound. They look at this golden little Autobot and see Bumblebee. They look at this and see Ratchet, albeit with a little bit of imagination. Every episode, they would see the Autobots struggle to beat whatever weapon the Decepticons threw at them, and while sometimes it would appear the Autobots might not succeed, no matter the odds, they always did. Ironhide always won. Prowl always won. Wheeljack always won. No matter how dire the situation, Optimus Prime always won. But what if one day Optimus Prime and his team fought a battle that most of them would never walk away from? During the airing of the second season of the cartoon, behind the scenes Hasbro was already developing ideas for the next generation of the Transformers. The current line of toys was soon to be discontinued and replaced with new bots. This time around sporting futuristic alt modes with more stylized designs and bot modes. Interestingly, this time around the toys were designed for animation by artist Floro Dery before being produced as toys. Before then, the designs of the Transformers were based entirely off of the pre-existing Diaclone toys, the original Japanese toy line that Hasbro imported to America as the Transformers. Now, the characters were designed for animation first. Hasbro wanted to introduce these toys to Transformers fans in spectacular fashion, and what better way than moving the Transformers from the television screen and onto the cinema screen. In the year of 1986, the second season of the Transformers wrapped up, and soon after, the Transformers the movie was unleashed upon the world, armed with the statement that the movie was beyond good, beyond evil, beyond your wildest imagination. Well, they were right, because I don't think anyone could have imagined this. Okay, so if you're not entirely familiar with the original cartoon, then it's only fair that you have some context before talking about this film. Because while the film is far from extreme, it is absolutely wild compared to the original cartoon. While the show itself varies in quality from episode to episode and arc to arc, it's very memorable for how hilariously dumb it is at times. Sure, it's a show that revolves around a literal war and every episode is about giant robots beating the shit out of each other, but it has no actual consequences or emotional stakes. Sure, the bots get hurt, but none of them die, and despite the cast being mostly grizzled war veterans, the language is squeaky clean. The point is, it's a harmless kids show that is made for selling toys, albeit one that does a good enough job of giving its cast personality and presence to warrant children becoming quite attached to the characters. More than anything else, it's family-friendly, light-hearted fun. Okay, keeping that in mind, here's the opening to The Transformers, the movie, released in 1986 and directed by Nelson Shin. Did that planet just kill an entire populated planet? Did I just witness a planet-wide robot genocide? I thought this was a kids movie. That's kind of dumb. Transformers! Woo! Transformers, yeah! You know how in Star Wars, when we see the Death Star blow up a planet for the first time, we only see the explosion from space? This scene is like seeing that up close, with all the pain-induced screams included, And instead of a single instant explosion, a planet and its people are slowly consumed and ripped apart. The movie, based on the Deathless cartoon, opened with a planet-wide genocide and then just blasted me with 80s rock music. I honestly don't know how to react to that.
Well, that's just prime.
Although, you know what? Who cares? That was just some random planet nobody cares about. It just introduces the big baddie, Unicron, a giant robot planet who can transform into a planet-sized robot. After being graced by the incredible Transformers theme song by the band Lion, we settle right into what feels like a normal episode of the cartoon. The Autobots are discussing the current state of the war before Optimus sends a group of Autobots on a mission to Earth. But Laserbeak was spying on the entire conversation, causing Megatron to lead the Decepticons to intercept the Autobot shuttle headed for Earth. Alright, here's where the action starts. So, the Decepticons are probably just going to capture the ship and take the Autobots prisoner, and then Optimus is going to come rescue them later. This is going to be great. Oh my god. Wait, Prell? No! Whoa, 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 whoa! You can't shoot the medic! That's like the first rule of war!
This was almost too easy, Starscream!
Did I put the wrong movie in?
Son of a bitch!
You know how I said that the cartoon gave kids an attachment to these characters? Yeah, at this point the show had been running for 2 seasons. Thousands of kids had grown to love the 4 Autobots on this ship, and were probably excited to see them fight the Decepticons, only to see them all gunned down just after the film had started. It's traumatic enough that they all die, but there's a brutality and bluntness to this scene that makes it even more shocking, and an even farther cry from the cartoon. Actually, this scene can be viewed as a metaphor for what Hasbro was aiming to do with this movie. Remember when I said that Hasbro was going to use this movie to introduce the new Transformers? The movie's method of doing that is to literally kill every old Transformer, so that at the end, only the new, more expensive toys, characters, are left standing. Sure, some old bots survive, but not many. As far as Hasbro was concerned, they were merely removing old discontinued products from their advertising and replacing them with the new current line. What they didn't realize was that to the kids who watched every episode of the cartoon and had gotten their hands on as many toys as they could, the bots on the screen weren't just toys. They were living, breathing characters to them. Killing them was like doing this.
Ahora vas a conocer a Dios.
Kids had loved these characters for years, only for this movie to kill them in less than a minute. Also, on a side note, these bots have been blasting each other for years and taken worse hits than the shots in this scene. But for some reason, it's like after 2 seasons of the cartoon, the Decepticons finally found the kill switch on their guns. After the shuttle attack, we're introduced to the new Autobots, and yeah, they're all great additions to the universe. On a more personal note, Hot Rod is one of my favourite Transformers of all time, and his first appearance is in this movie. Although some fans really hate him for reasons I'll elaborate upon later. Also, spoilers, all the new bots live to the end of the film. As for the rest of the original bots...
For the love of God! For the love of God!
Yeah, they're not so lucky. The entire first act of this movie is a Transformers bloodbath, As soon as the Decepticons launch an ambush on the Autobot Earth base from the stolen ship, everything goes to hell. It's a slaughter, and while it is essentially the same sort of scenario you would see in the cartoon, it's much more violent in comparison and the body count is much higher. The fight continues for hours until finally, acting as a true Deus Ex Machina, Optimus Prime arrives on the battlefield, and what follows is simply incredible.
You got the power.
Optimus pummels through the entire Decepticon army and then proceeds to fight Megatron in what is probably the best Transformers fight to ever be put to film. It's every bit as brutal as you would expect by this point. Optimus gets beat and shot to hell before he finally puts Megatron on the ground. Optimus holds his rifle on Megatron, but as Megatron spots a pistol under the rubble, he takes advantage of Optimus Prime's nobility.
Grant me mercy, I beg of you.
Hot Rod jumps in to stop Megatron before he can shoot Optimus.
No, you don't, Megatron. Out of the way, Hot Rod.
But after a short struggle, he is overpowered by Megatron and Optimus loses his opportunity.
Fall, fall.
Optimus kneels, barely functioning as Megatron gloats instead of just killing Optimus.
I would have waited an eternity for this.
Bro, how are you even still standing? You literally look worse than Optimus. This guy would shoot Optimus, take 2 steps, and then die. He's literally crying. Those are tears. Bro's messed up. Anyway, as I was saying, while Megatron is too busy stroking his ego, Optimus, with everything he has left, manages to deliver a killer final hit on Megatron, defeating him and forcing the Decepticons to retreat.
How do you feel, mighty Megatron?
God, I love Starscream. While all the other Autobots are celebrating their victory, everybody waits for Optimus to also revel in his triumphant victory. But he doesn't. Instead, he stays collapsed on the ground as Hot Rod rushes to his side.
Optimus, forgive me.
At this point, everybody in the cinema is still thinking that Optimus is just out of the fight for a moment. At the end of the movie, he'll rise from his rest and single-handedly defeat Unicron and save the universe. But the music and the atmosphere of the scene foretells otherwise. A beeping medical machine plays against a much more orchestral and somber track compared to the 80s power metal that the film has blasted so far, and Optimus lies broken on a medical table surrounded by his fellow Autobots. The silence is broken when Perceptor utters that.
I fear the wounds are fatal.
There's a denial that fills this scene.
Prime, you can't die.
Do not grieve. Soon, I shall be one with the Matrix.
Optimus can't die. He's the leader of the Autobots. He's invincible. Optimus struggles to speak as he turns to Ultra Magnus to decree him the new leader of the Autobots, and the wielder of the Matrix of the leadership. In a very dramatic sequence, the Matrix is passed from a dying Optimus to Ultra Magnus, and the torch is passed from the first generation to the new. Exiting the gravity of the passing of the Matrix, the beeping of the medical machine slows and flatlines. The light fades from Optimus's eyes. His body turns grey, and his head turns lifeless towards the table. Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots, is no more, dead with his spark extinguished. The casualties don't end there either. Megatron becomes so badly wounded after his fight with Prime that he is left to die in space, only to be reborn as Galvatron by Unicron. And yes, Galvatron is still by default Megatron, but the bot known as Megatron is killed when he is reborn as Galvatron. So much so that Galvatron's first major accomplishment in the film is doing something Megatron never did. Killing Starscream. No hesitation, no mercy, just a single devastating cannon blow that turns Starscream into nothing more than dust and rubble. Okay, Hasbro, the tears came. You gave us a pretty good scare there, alright? We just have to wait for Optimus to be revived by the end of the movie and everyone else will come back. Right? Even Starscream? I mean, it's a kids' movie. They can't just kill characters like that. Here, look, we can just skip right to the end and... Wait. They're not here. The Transformers the movie does not play with death and resurrection. When a character is killed in this movie, they stay dead. I mean, sure, Ultra Magnus is killed and then repaired, but there's a whole bunch of stupid lore behind why that is. And no, the Junkions could not have brought Optimus back to life. Here, look, I did my research. Just go watch this video if you don't believe me. The link's in the description. My point is, in a world where there are so many other franchises that constantly kill and revive characters to raise emotional stakes, only to back out of that decision at the last minute to avoid upsetting fans, this movie does the polar opposite. Optimus Prime died because Hasbro wanted to sell newer, more expensive toys. Prime was the old model, a boring toy compared to the new flashier bots like Springer and Hot Rod. To Hasbro, Optimus Prime was a toy. But to the thousands of kids sitting in the cinema, they were not watching an old product being phased out of production. They were watching their greatest hero and inspiration slowly break down during his final heroic act and bared witness to the very real, very impactful, and very definitive death of Optimus Prime. During the production of the film, Hasbro was adamant that Optimus Prime was to be killed off, when not everybody creating the film agreed. Screenwriter Ron Friedman, who was a writer on the cartoon series, strongly advised against killing off Optimus Prime, saying in a 2013 interview that to remove Optimus Prime, to physically remove Daddy from the family, that wasn't going to work. The people behind the film were incredibly tone deaf when it came to the importance of these characters, especially Optimus Prime. Story consultant Flint Dill elaborated, saying, "We didn't know that he was an icon. It was a toy show. We just thought we were killing off the old product line to replace it with new products. Kids were crying in the theaters. We heard about people leaving the movie. We were getting a lot of nasty notes about it. There was some kid who locked himself in his bedroom for 2 weeks to not only kill Optimus Prime, but additionally sent him off with a slow, emotional, and devastating scene, with the acting and music to boot, creating a genuinely sad and memorable moment to this day that still sticks with people, was not something anybody expected from the TV show about giant dumb robots. The fact that they dedicated an entire scene to have the audience witness their hero slowly and painfully leave this world gives a sense of gravity and realism to the news that Optimus Prime is no more. Optimus Prime was real to these kids. His death was very real and very traumatic. I mean, hell, a kid locked himself in his bedroom for 2 weeks. 2 weeks because Optimus Prime died. Can you imagine seeing that kid after 2 whole weeks and having a conversation with him? "Hey Jimmy, I haven't seen you in ages. Where you been?" "Oh, Optimus Prime died, so I locked myself in my room because I was depressed." "How old are you again?" "I'm 10. How do you mess up so badly? You cause a 10-year-old to have a depressive episode. Oh, and remember how I said that people hated Hot Rod after this movie? Yeah, it's because they were so shocked and angered by Prime's death that they instantly blamed it on Hot Rod for jumping in to stop Megatron grabbing the pistol and blocking Prime's shot. Okay, look, Megatron had the pistol in his hand in sight even before Hot Rod jumped at him. Prime could have taken the shot, but he didn't. People loved Optimus so much that they straight up rejected the bot who eventually became Rodimus Prime and took Optimus's place. People hated Rodimus so much that it revived Optimus in the following seasons of the cartoon to just kill him again. Okay, look, the first time it was heartbreaking, now it's just insulting. A lot, and I mean a lot, of this movie's cultural significance comes from the sheer insanity of its quest to brutally murder just about every beloved character that the series had introduced up to this point. They turned an extremely straightforward cartoon about robots punching each other over energy cubes into this animated Star Wars inspired heavy metal sci-fi action film that showed the casualties of war. Sure, it's no Saving Private Ryan or Thin Red Line, but when you make a film based off a cartoon with moments like this,
This stuff's the greatest! You are either lying or you're stupid!
I'm stupid! I'm stupid! Well, welcome aboard, Shockwave. It looks like we've got a planet to reclaim. You can't keep me in here, Megatron!
and then present your young, impressionable audience with this.
Please! No! No!
Well, then it would be safe to assume he shocked everyone.
Oh shit, what are we gonna do now?
Is he allowed to say that? I'm starting to think PG is too low of a rating because this movie clearly doesn't give a fuck. Kids went to this movie excited to see their favorite bots on the big screen. Although in this case, it was a blessing if your bot didn't grace the screen because at least then you could hold on to the thought that your favorite bots still lived on. I didn't see Hound die on screen, so yes, he survived! In summary, Hasbro's actions in cancelling an old toy line and replacing it with a new one traumatized an entire generation of children. But hey, at least despite the trauma, the movie itself is pretty damn good.
Beyond good, beyond evil, beyond your wildest imagination. Transformers.
That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about.
The Transformers will return after these messages.